Yes. So I came across a video. I believe it was Midas Reports. They had a guy in there talking about uh, basically the next step of the Republican Party. There's a guy. His name is John Daniel Davis, and he wrote in the Federalist, "We need to stop calling ourselves conservatives." Um, Basically, conservative project has failed, and need to forge a new political identity that reflects our revolutionary moment. Let's talk about it. He says it's failed. Time for a new approach. They've defined their politics in terms of what they wish to conserve or persevere: individual rights, family rights, religious freedom, and so on. Conservatives, we are told, want to preserve the rich traditions and civilization achievements of the past, pass on to the next generation, defend them from the left. Pass them on to the next generation and defend them from the left. Um, in America, they believe the left wants to dismantle the constitutional system and transform America to a woke dystopia. All right. In the earlier era, that made sense. They want to conserve, but the honest appraisal of the situation totally renders the definition absurd. After all, what they concede in conserving? My lifetime, they have lost much. Marriage is what they have understood for thousands of years. First Amendment, symbols of control over our borders. Distinction between men and women, and of late, the basic rule of law. Let's start with this. He's talking about gay marriage. And it's important to recognize that this is a person that's talking about people and social issues, and he's not talking about these issues in relation to people. See, he's talking about all this as a left, but some of this isn't left issues. He's not recognizing it as, okay, gay marriage, that's what wanted. That's what people wanted, so they got that. And as I continue in this, it's the point he's making is we've lost, and we can no longer control, and so we should now use violence to maintain our control, because our ideology, it is so despised, it is so unappetizing that the only thing we have left is violence. And the guy that I heard talk about this referred to the Unabomber, Ted Kaczynski, who wrote his manifesto was Industrial Revolution and Its Future. And he talked about in that little book about technology and how technology would change society. And he's right. Now, Kaczynski was talking about how it would change society. It would pull people away from things, and it would separate from people, would become alienated from reality. People become alienated from society, which has happened. This guy is, as I continue, he's saying that it's Republicans' fault because technology changed society and that they can't fight that. And, my take would be technology used in the military, technology used for a lot of things. You can't roll that back. And, years ago, people like this, you would have said, well, go to North Korea, if you believe this. Go to China. We are a democracy, or we are a free country. And this is the first time I heard a conservative actually advocating that that we should not be a free country, and that freedom actually works against their best interests. Conservatism without freedom is a conservatism that I'm very confused about. Let's continue. Oh, and calling himself a conservative, today's political climate, but I say one is a conservative because one wants to preserve the medieval European traditions of arranged marriage and trial by combat. Whatever the merits of practice, you cannot preserve, or defend something that's dead. Western civilization is dying. Traditions and practices conservatives champion are at best only preserved in an ever-shrinking private sphere. Yes, because at one time, guys could have a house, they could feed their whole family, they could do all this stuff, they could have a little wear a little warehouse job, they could take care of their family, they could pay for their mortgage, and you had a more secure society. So if I'm white and I'm living in a rural area and I can take care of myself, then I guess I'm not going to listen to Democrats if you put it that way. But I'm in a society where my food bills have doubled. And I'm living in a society to where I may have to go to food banks. I may have to utilize government assistance. I'm going to look at the world a lot differently. And I may not be so quick to go to conservatism. And that's just, this guy not understand how things have changed over the last 50 years, that there isn't much desire for unskilled labor, and guys could go to prison, come out, and still get a good job back then. You can still get, if you get your foot in the door, you get a good job. So that's just society changing. He says that Western civilization is dying, championship practice, the conservatives champion are at best preserved in the ever-restricting private spirit. Yes, because that's called privilege. Yes, it's privilege. And if I don't have that privilege, then those things aren't of any value to me. And also, here's another thing. As time is going on, we care less about getting in other people's business and what private citizens do in their bedrooms. You hate that, don't you? Ooh. Let's read on. Talk family values. Assume there are enough Americans able and willing to marry and raise children for something like family values to matter. Public discourse, much less than the halls of power. To defend religious freedom is to misapprehend that the real risk today is widespread irreligion, which will lead so many religious Americans in the coming generations, the government and large corporations will inevitably and easily persecute them. He lost me. That was my first when I first read this. How can you? Why would government persecute Christians? Why would corporations persecute Christians? I don't get that. I don't understand that. I don't get it now or when I read it the first time. I'm going to read further, and he gets into talking about woke corporations. Let's go. Conservatives are invoking these things. They are magic incantations to roll back time, just as they did during the crucial decades of the past half century, where a cultural and technological revolution was remaking America before their eyes. They did nothing to stop it. There's a guy, I'm not going to read his name. He said the conservative project failed because, quote, it didn't take into account the revolutionary principle of technology and its inherent connection to the telos of sheer profit. I thought conservatives were for profit. I thought conservatives believed in profit without feeling a need or desire to owe anybody. So now you're saying that Republicans shouldn't just work to just get pure profit at the cost of alienating people and destroying communities? This is different. you know, so much of this, he's saying that Republicans have been wrong. That the Republicans have basically been saying, F everybody else. We're going to make our money. And he's saying that maybe that alienated so many people. And so now the answer is just go to mass violence and, start making everything illegal, lock people up. It's like Judge Dredd. That's what he's kind of advocating for as you go on. It's Judge Dredd, where a guy gets a ticket for parking and spends 30 days in jail. This is a guy, a parole violation means 5 years, mandatory 5 years. Conservatives were too obsessed with left-wing revolutionary politics and missed the real threat. Technological change so swift and powerful it reordered society, put tradition aside, and unleashed a more relativism that rendered the conservative project obsolete. That's called capitalism. What he's saying that society has changed, but that's just capitalism. Who do you think made these decisions? My handheld I use at work. I use that because my job gave me one, and I have to use it to log in and out for my job. That isn't a choice. I have the app on my phone. It isn't a choice. That's so I can keep up with my job. That's capitalism. So they can track me and how long it takes to get to every stop and things of that nature. Instead of questioning these technologies, asking whether they would contribute to human flourishing, Conservatives acquiesced to inevitability and focused neither either state on narrow issues. This result has been transformation society within the span of a single human lifetime, and with the wholesale destruction of our traditions and looming implosion in Western civilization. How? And I realized when even Western civilization turned white people. White people. Let's just get to the meat. So what kind, should conservatives today, in its inheritance of a failed movement, adopt? For starters, they should stop thinking themselves as conservatives, much less as Republicans, and start thinking themselves as radicals and counter-revolutionaries. So that's what they are. Indeed, it's what they are. They might, and look at the Pilgrims, look at the revolutionaries, the Founding Fathers, yada, yada, yada. He talks about time for something new, a new way of thinking, and speaking about what conservative politics should be, fusion of past decades in which conservatives made common cause of market-obsessed libertarians and foreign policy neocons is finished. So it's conservatism incorporated, establishment GOP enabled. See, that's how you know this won't happen. He's like AOC for the right. And you'll see what I'm talking about as I go further. They're too powerful. And they're going to ride the Trump train. And see, the thing is, the Republican Party has no spine when it comes to doing things. Because he talks about unions. And I know that the right is not going to do that. There's too much money. See, this is like talking about climate change. You're talking about real issues now. He talks about homophobia, but he doesn't really get into that. They want to stay on that and transgender bathrooms and that preschools have litter boxes. And this is what they want to dig on. They don't want to dig on the average working man at the end of the month, having to scrape and try to pull together to pay the rent. That's what we're talking about here in a roundabout kind of way. He's saying that saluting the flag is not enough. We've got to speak to the people. We've got to create another kind of conservatism. The election of Donald Trump heralded a populist wave, and in the public policy we know it. Now we're on uncharted waters. Populism is simply about saying we're going to use the simplest solution to deal with difficult issues. That's all it is. This year has been plenty of talking on the right, what's to be done differently. And one guess is the advocate of conservatism is comfortable with big government, and in fact sees it necessary not only for the common good, but to tame the what they call the private tyranny of woke corporations empowered by unrestrained market forces. I thought you guys were for that. I thought you were for unrestrained. So now you're saying unrestrained market forces are bad if they go against what you want. That's what we're saying now? A little confused here. Conservative Catholics should claim today ownership of a pro-worker, even pro-union political agenda that most belong to the left and was produced generations of Democrat voting Catholic workers. That won't work. See, he's not understanding that the right is like, what I understand the right to be today is simply a mouthpiece for the rich and powerful. He's talking about the right as though like big moves are made by Farmer John on the farm, that big moves are made by the bumpkins. And that's not the case. The free market is what runs the Republican Party. That should be understood. So the idea you're going to just like basically just spit in the face of all the rich and start unions? Does he not understand that unions push back against corporations that hurt people? That the history of unions is left wing. The history of unions, if not left wing, the history of unions is about protecting the common man. And Trump didn't care about it. The Republican Party didn't care about that. I am befuddled and confused as to how he thinks the Republican Party is going to turn around and start opening up unions to And if the union is real weak, what I'm thinking, if they're real weak and they're like, well, just pray for your problems, then people won't want to join the unions. Yeah, moving on. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make any sense at all to me. Leader willingness to embrace government power has been a topic fruitful debate on new right for recent years, as it should be. However uncomfortable traditional small government conservatives may be with the argument is more or less true. Put bluntly, if they want to save the country after they're going to rebuild and in a sense refound it, which means getting used to the power, the idea of wielding power, not despising it. I want to talk about that. That woke. Let's come back. Woke corp. What? Let's see. Woke corporations. Woke corporations. Capitalism to me is about, with Trump, this era, is really about screw the rules. We're too big to fail. We're too big to jail, and we can do whatever we want. And that to me is what the right is. And you're saying that you think overnight you're going to change that somehow because they're woke? Hey, I got a question. Maybe some of these corporations are woke because that's what the market base wants. So he's saying that he wants to destroy all these corporations, make them basically risk losing all their money, losing all their jobs because they're woke? Does that make sense? Maybe you think they're woke because there's money in that. There's if I work in if I got a business in San Francisco, I'm gonna go to Pride. If I was in New York in a Jewish area, I might go to synagogue. I might have like Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur type stuff in my shop. I might hire some Jewish people. I mean, like clearly Jewish people. I might like tell them like, hey, if you want to go out, if you want to go home early or take that day off, I'm fine with it. Because that's what you do in capitalism. You're in connection to your customers and your community. Does that make me woke? Am I woke because I know where my money comes from? I'm not going to bite the hand that feeds me. This is crap. I mean, this is clear crap. This is a delusional man talking. Look why he says because accommodation or compromise with the left is impossible. One only need consider the speed at which discourse changed on gay marriage, from ensuring conservatives ahead of the 2015 Obert failed decision that gave Americans only ask for toleration, to never-ending persecution. Jack Phillips, that's the cake maker. Why are we rolling back gay marriage? I'm confused about this. You're talking about woke corporations, and you're talking about corporations that are running on these things. You ever think there's money in like pink washing? Like, I'm not saying they all care about gay people, but you ever think there's money in the gay community? Like with stuff? When you have corporations, you have like famous people who stand behind weed legalization. You ever think there's money behind it? I mean, I've heard of subject. This is a person who is recognized. Society is not interested and is kind of moved beyond their politics. And this is the way they're going to go forward now, is to, we hate society. We hate you. Not hate Democrats. We hate the common man. The left won't stop, conservatives stop them, which means conservatives will have to discard outdated and irrelevant notions about small government. The government will have to become, in the hands of conservatives, an instrument of renewal in American life, and in some cases, a blunt instrument indeed. To stop big tech, we require antitrust powers to break up the largest Silicon Valley firms. That won't happen because they're making all this military stuff now. They're the ones putting all this drone stuff out. They're the ones, the virtual reality for the soldiers they're making. They're not going to do that. They're not going to act on that. And there's a chip shortage right now. Why would you mess with that? To stop universities from spreading poisonous ideology, we require state legislatures to stave them of public funds. So you want to start attacking education. To stop this disintegration of the family might require reversing the travesty of no-fault divorce. with generous subsidies for families with small children. Conservatives need not shy away from making these arguments because they betray some curious libertarian fantasy about free markets and small government. It's time to clear our minds if we can't. I don't think that conservatives really believe in libertarianism. I think libertarianism, and I was libertarian, it's a cop-out. It's a way to look at the hell that many people in America live in. And it's a way to blame it on people and to say it's your fault. And, pull yourself out your bootstraps, as they say. Yeah, bootstraps. And that's what this is. That's what that is. I don't think they believe it. I think it's a cop-out. That it's your fault and you deserve the hell that some of these cities have become, where there is no future, or there is no foreseeable good future for a lot of people. And it's about, the rich getting as rich as possible. That's what Republicans mean. I don't think they really believe that stuff. Other contexts, wielding government power will mean a dramatic expansion of the criminal code. Oh, wow. Let's see. He goes into putting out the anti-abortion stuff and homophobic, transphobic stuff. All of it sounds radical, fine, need not lay down this way. Conservatives in the least. Radicalism is precisely the approach needed now because the necessary task is nothing less radical and revolutionary. Power corrupts. Wants the right, sees the power become corrupt. They have a point. He says if they are able to maintain, they relinquish power, it's a fair question. We should tend to it after we have won the war. So he's calling this a war. He's calling it a war. Only two paths. Conservatives wake from executive slumber to reclaim and refine what has been lost. They'll watch until it should die. Just on third road. I don't even know where to go next with that. It is so terrifying. I guess it's interesting in a way because the Federalists is pretty big from what I understand, and if this is kind of a recognition that they are losing and they have been losing, but it's terrifying that this is the road they're going to take next. Thanks for listening.